Welcome to Lukebook Money, built for Singapore. Today, 30 money lessons from the Bible, and how every one of them applies to building wealth in Singapore right now. Here's the real story. Quick favor before we start. If you're new to Tiger Brokers, just tap the link in my description below, or key in the code on your screen when you sign up. We both earn $90, and it quietly keeps these daily videos free. Thank you. Now, let's get into it. Here is something genuinely strange. A lot of the sharpest money advice you will ever hear was written down thousands of years ago, long before CPF existed, before HDB existed, before there was a single stock exchange anywhere on earth. Tucked inside the Bible are dozens of lines about debt, saving, planning and greed that are startlingly practical, even today. Not sermons, and not vague feel-good stuff. Plain, hard-nosed, useful money sense. You will find sharp little lines about patience, about borrowing, about generosity, and about the endless trap of always wanting more. These are the very same money struggles that you and I are still wrestling with right now, today. Now, a quick and important note before we go any further. This is not a religious video, and I am genuinely not here to preach at anyone, or to convert anyone to anything. So please, relax on that front. Whether you are Buddhist, Muslim, Christian, freethinker, or anything else at all, you are truly welcome here. We are treating every one of these purely as timeless money wisdom that anyone living in Singapore can pick up and use. So let me lay out the honest framing for the whole episode. And here is the usual caveat, said plainly. This is education, and not financial advice. I do not know your personal numbers, so please treat everything here as ideas to weigh carefully, and never as instructions to blindly follow. What is truly remarkable is how neatly these ancient ideas map onto very modern Singapore problems. Credit card interest, new flat down payments, soaring home loans, CPF top-ups, the wisdom lands on all of them. Think of it as a very old field guide, quietly translated into the language of CPF, HDB and SORA. The wrapper changed completely over the centuries. The human being underneath it did not change at all. So here is the plan for today. 30 lessons, grouped into 8 simple themes. For each one, I will give you the old principle in plain English first, and then the sharp, specific Singapore move that it points you toward. Alright. Grab yourself a copy, get comfortable, and let us take them one at a time. First theme. Before you build anything at all, you have to get yourself free from debt. Because debt, very quietly, steals your future right out from under you. Lesson 1 comes from Proverbs, chapter 22. The old line says the borrower is servant to the lender. Short, blunt, and still completely true. Strip away all the poetry and it is brutally simple. Every single dollar you owe hands a slice of your future income, and a slice of your future freedom, straight over to somebody else. Here in Singapore, the sharpest version of this is credit card debt, which can quietly run at 24 to 28% a year. That is enormous. Buy now pay later looks free at 0%, but miss a payment and the late fees pile up fast. And here is the key insight. No STI ETF, no global index fund, nothing you can safely buy, reliably outearns 28% a year. So clearing that balance is the single best guaranteed return you will ever get anywhere. So the rule of thumb is simple, and I want you to remember it. Kill high-interest debt before you invest even a single dollar. Freedom first, and then growth. And once that debt is finally gone, work hard to keep it gone. Do not let a fresh balance quietly creep back the very month after you clear it. That is how people get stuck for years. Lesson 2 comes from Exodus, chapter 22. It warns, quite firmly, against piling crushing interest onto people who are already stretched thin and struggling. The timeless idea underneath it is this. Lending should be a thing that helps someone up and out of a hole. It should never be a cage they can never climb out of. The modern trap here is high-cost lending. Even a licensed moneylender can legally charge up to 4% a month, and an illegal loan shark will charge far more, with harassment on top. Either way, it compounds, month after month, into a financial nightmare. And on the other side of the coin, before you sign any legitimate loan at all, understand exactly how a sharpest rate actually moves. A low-looking floating rate today can quietly balloon on you the moment interest rates rise. So borrow only from licensed institutions, read the interest terms slowly and carefully, and never let desperation push you toward money that was quietly designed, from the very start, to trap you. Lesson 3 comes from Psalm 37. The wicked borrow and do not repay, it says. But the good repay faithfully, every time. The principle here is that reliability is itself a genuine form of wealth. Being the person who always pays back what they owe is quietly, deeply valuable over a lifetime. In Singapore, this shows up very directly in your credit bureau score. Every bill, every card, and every loan that you pay in full and on time slowly builds that score up. And that score is not some abstract number. It directly shapes the mortgage rate, the credit limit, and the renovation loan terms that you will be offered on your very next flat. So treat paying on time as reputation building, and not just as boring admin. A clean track record quite literally buys you cheaper money later on in life. It is a small thing with big leverage. A strong repayment record can shave real, meaningful dollars off the interest you pay on your home loan for decades. Second theme. Once you are free of that bad debt, the next move is ancient, and it is powerful. Pay yourself first, and then store up carefully for winter. Lesson 4 comes from Proverbs, chapter 3. Honor whatever you earn by setting aside the first portion of it, before anything else at all gets the chance to claim it. This is really the original pay yourself first. You do not save whatever happens to be left over after all the spending. You take your own share right off the top, first, every single time. In practice, this is easy to set up. The day your salary lands in your account, automatically transfer a fixed slice of it straight into savings or investments, before you can even feel it, or be tempted to spend it. Then, on top of that, stack the Singapore-specific top-ups. A yearly voluntary CPF top-up into your special account or MediSave, or a contribution into the supplementary retirement scheme, all for valuable tax relief. It is the very same ancient move, just wearing a modern wrapper. Your future self quietly gets paid before your present-day ones ever do. And honestly, do not worry too much about the initial sting of it. You will adjust to living on the rest within about a month. You almost never actually miss the money you never see. Lesson 5 comes from Proverbs, chapter 6. Go to the ant, it says, and consider its ways. It stores up its food carefully, with no boss and no supervisor standing over it at all. The insight buried in there is that real saving is self-driven. Nobody at all forces the ant to do it. It just quietly does the work, on its own, while the good season lasts. So the modern trick is to remove willpower from the equation entirely. Do not rely on your own discipline every single month, because that always fails eventually. Automate the whole thing instead. Set up a recurring monthly investment plan, a regular savings plan that buys into an STI or a global index ETF, and just let it purchase automatically, month after month, rain or shine. Once it is running quietly on autopilot, wealth building stops being a decision you have to win 30 separate times a year. It simply happens in the background, whether you feel like it or not. The ant does not wake up feeling motivated every single day. It just has a system, and the system carries it. So build yourself the system, and then let that system carry you too. Lesson 6 comes from Genesis, chapter 41. It tells the story of 7 fat, abundant years, followed by 7 lean and hungry ones that nobody could see coming. The wise move in the story was to carefully store grain during all the good years. And that is exactly what allowed a whole country to survive the famine when it finally, inevitably arrived. Your own version of that stored grain is an emergency fund. Before you touch any risky investing at all, build up 3 to 6 months of your expenses, in cash that you can reach instantly. Park that money somewhere safe and liquid. A high-yield savings account works well, or a simple ladder of treasury bills that mature in stages so some cash is always coming free. Here is why it matters so much. A sudden retrenchment, or an unexpected medical bill, is your personal lean year. With a proper buffer, you can ride it out calmly, instead of in a total panic. But without any buffer, you are forced to sell your investments at the worst possible moment, or reach for that 28% credit card. A good emergency fund prevents both of those disasters. Lesson 7 comes from Proverbs, chapter 21. The wise, it says, keep a store of good things. But the fool devours absolutely everything he manages to get his hands on. In plain terms, do not consume every last dollar that reaches you. Always keep a reserve back. Living right at the very edge of your income, month after month, is incredibly fragile. A practical target for Singapore is to try and keep at least a quarter of your take-home pay, rather than spending yourself all the way down to the very last dollar each month. And here is the key habit that changes everything. When you get a pay raise, let it lift your savings rate, and not just your lifestyle. Make a point of banking a real chunk of every single pay rise. The fool simply spends the whole raise, and then wonders where it went. The wise person stores a good part of it away. Over a full career, that one habit alone is worth a small fortune. Lifestyle creep is the quiet killer here. So gut the gap between what you earn and what you spend. Because that gap, right there, is exactly where all of your real wealth is born. Third theme, and it is the one that quietly separates the calm people from the constantly stressed ones. Plan carefully before you leap. Lesson 8 comes from Proverbs, chapter 21. The plans of the diligent lead surely to plenty, it says. But hasty shortcuts lead only to loss. The idea is a simple one. Steady, thought-through planning beats impulsive, rushed shortcuts almost every single time you compare them over the long run. Concretely, this means running a simple written monthly budget. Just a basic spreadsheet, or an app, where every dollar of your take-home pay is given a clear job before the month even begins. Then plan out the lumpy, expensive stuff early. The new HDB flat down payment, the renovation, a wedding. None of it can ambush you if you have been quietly seeing it coming from years out. Diligence here is really not glamorous at all. It is a spreadsheet and a little bit of foresight. But that unglamorous habit is exactly what quietly, reliably leads to plenty over time. And remember, a budget is not a cage at all. It is simply you deciding, on purpose, where your money goes, instead of wondering, later, where on earth it all went. Lesson 9 comes from Luke, chapter 14. Who among you, it asks, builds a tower without first sitting down quietly to count the full cost of it? The warning is vivid and a little embarrassing. Start something big that you cannot actually finish, and you are left standing there with a half-built mess for everyone to see. The single biggest place where Singaporeans skip this step is property. Before signing an option to purchase, you have to count absolutely everything, and not just the headline sticker price. That means the buyer's stamp duty, and the additional buyer's stamp duty if it applies to you, plus the renovation, the legal fees, and a healthy cash buffer sitting on top of all of it. And crucially, stress test that monthly loan at a SORA rate around 2% higher than today's rate. Ask yourself honestly, could you still comfortably afford it if interest rates climb from here? If the honest answer to that question is no, then you have not actually counted the cost. You have just quietly hoped for the best. So count first, and then sign second. Lesson 10 comes from Proverbs, chapter 24. Prepare your fields, and get your income in good order first, it says. And then, after that, go and build your house. The order genuinely matters here. You secure the thing that produces money for you, before you take on the big thing that consumes it. Get that backwards and you are in trouble. For us in Singapore, that means locking in stable income, your down payment, and your emergency buffer, before you commit to any of the really big, heavy financial commitments. The condo upgrade, the expensive continental car, quitting your job to start a business, all of those are the house. So build your fields, meaning your income, first, before you build any of that. Get that sequence wrong, and one single bad month can topple the whole thing over. Get it right, and suddenly the big moves feel safe and solid, instead of scary and fragile. It is a boring order, but it produces a powerful result. Feels first, and then the house, every single time. Never the other way around. Fourth theme, and this one is really the heart of investing. Grow your money steadily and patiently, and not overnight. Lesson 11 comes from Proverbs, chapter 13. Wealth gained in a hurry always dwindles away, it says. But wealth that is gathered patiently, little by little, quietly grows. It is almost a perfect description of the stock market itself. The garage quick punts tend to vanish into thin air. But a patient, boring, unexciting approach quietly compounds, year after year. So skip the meme coin gambling and the hot tip lottery completely. Instead, dollar cost average a fixed sum of money, every single month, into a low-cost STI or a global index ETF. Here is roughly what steady monthly investing can grow into over about 20 years. Now, this is purely illustrative, and markets never, ever move in a neat straight line like this, but the shape is the point. Little by little is really just an ancient description of compounding. The very same amount, invested every month, for many years, quietly does all of the heavy lifting so that you do not have to. So set the amount, automate it completely, and this is genuinely the hardest part of all, leave it completely alone, and let time do its slow and patient work. Lesson 12 comes from Matthew, chapter 25, the famous parable of the talents. In it, one servant carefully buries his master's money in the ground, just to keep it perfectly safe. And he is the one who gets scolded for it, in the end. The lesson is that capital is meant to be put to productive work. It is not meant to be hidden away, doing absolutely nothing. The modern version of burying your money in the ground is leaving it sitting in an account paying 0.05%, while inflation quietly eats away at its real value every year. So move that idle cash into things that actually earn something. Treasury bills, Singapore savings bonds, or a simple regular index ETF plan are all sensible, low-drama places for it to go. Safe does not have to mean buried. Money that just sits there, untouched, is not actually being careful or prudent. It is slowly, silently, and continuously shrinking in real terms. Even the safest treasury bills or Singapore savings bonds comfortably beat zero. Idle cash is honestly the one single option that quietly guarantees you a loss, every single year. Lesson 13 comes from Luke, chapter 16, the parable of the shrewd manager. Oddly enough, he actually gets praise for being resourceful and clever with the money in front of him. The takeaway is not about being dishonest at all. It is this. Use every legitimate advantage that is available to you, and use it wisely, while you still actually can. And Singapore hands you a whole lot of levers to pull. Start with CPF. Voluntary top-ups into your special account earn a guaranteed 4%, and they also cut down your income tax at the same time. Then there is the supplementary retirement scheme, where your contributions reduce your income tax bill right now, and can then be invested in the market to grow for later. And there is timing, too. Refinancing your home loan sensibly, around the ups and downs of the Sora cycle, can quietly save you many thousands of dollars over the years. None of this is exotic or complicated. It is simply knowing the rules of your own system well, and then using every one of them fully exactly the way the shrewd manager in the story did. Take a quick breath here. You are almost halfway through all 30, and the pattern is already crystal clear. Steady, patient, and unglamorous, and it genuinely works. Lesson 14 comes from Proverbs, chapter 28. The faithful person is richly blessed, it says. But the one who is desperate to get rich quick will surely not go unpunished. That is a 3,000-year-old warning about the exact schemes that are flooding your phone screen right now, at this very moment. Some things really do not change. So treat any guaranteed 20% return, or any can't possibly lose opportunity, as a big, flashing red flag. Guaranteed high returns, with no risk, simply do not exist anywhere. Before you hand over a single cent to anyone, go and check the Monetary Authority of Singapore's Investor Alert list, and confirm that the firm is properly licensed to do what it claims. The steady, faithful, boring investor almost always wins the long game in the end. The one who is constantly chasing quick riches usually just ends up funding somebody else's fortune instead. And if somebody is aggressively rushing you to decide today only, that pressure itself is the warning sign you needed. Real, genuine opportunities will always let you sleep on it first. Lesson 15 comes from Ecclesiastes, chapter 11. Divide your portion among 7, or even 8, different ventures, it advises. For you simply do not know what disaster may come upon the land. That is diversification, written down in ancient Hebrew, thousands of years ago. Do not bet everything you have on one single outcome, because you genuinely cannot see the future coming. A very Singaporean mistake is holding 80 or even 90% of your entire net worth in just one single thing. One local bank stock, perhaps, or one single property. So spread your money across different asset classes and different geographies. Some local, some global, some in bonds, some in cash. That way, a single nasty shock can never sink your whole ship. You honestly do not need 8 perfect bets to do well. You just need to make very sure that you are never, ever, one single bad event away from total disaster. Diversifying can feel really boring, and that is precisely because it is quietly working in the background. In this particular game, remember, boring is very much the entire point. Lesson 16 comes from Luke, chapter 12, the parable of the rich fool. He builds bigger and bigger barns, just so he can hoard more and more, with no real purpose in mind at all. Now, the point of it is not that saving is somehow bad. Saving is good. The point is that hoarding for its own sake, with no plan and no purpose behind it, is strangely, deeply empty. Some Singaporeans do the exact opposite of the reckless spender. They sit on top of huge cash piles, just to feel safe, while inflation slowly and quietly erodes those piles year after year. The fix for both problems is purpose. Give every single dollar a clear job to do: retirement, the kids' education, giving, a home, and then confidently deploy all of the excess to go and work. Money without any purpose behind it is not really safety at all. It is just a bigger and bigger barn, quietly leaking its real value away, year after year after year. Fifth theme. Once you have finally built something real and worthwhile, you then have to guard it carefully. Because wealth, left alone, leaks very quietly when nobody is watching it. Lesson 17 comes from Proverbs, chapter 27. Know well the state of your flocks, it advises, and pay careful attention to your herds. For riches simply do not last forever. A shepherd who never bothers to count his sheep will be genuinely surprised, one day, when he finds that they are gone. And exactly the same quiet truth applies to your money too. So actually track it properly. Review your net worth, your CPF balances, your insurance policies, and your investments, at the very least once every single quarter. You simply cannot manage or even notice a slow leak in money that you never actually look at. Most of those quiet, painful losses come from nothing more than not bothering to check. And it really does not take very long to do. A simple statement review, just a few times a year, keeps you firmly and calmly in control of everything that you own. The old saying holds true here. What gets measured gets managed. A quick quarterly look is more than enough to catch a small problem while it is still small and easy to fix. Lesson 18 comes from Proverbs, chapter 22. Do not put up security for another person's debt, it warns. Because if they cannot pay, the creditor will come and take even the bait from under you. It is a very blunt warning about co-signing loans. Somebody else's broken promise can quite easily become the very thing that ends up costing you absolutely everything you own. So here in Singapore, think very, very hard indeed before you agree to be a guarantor, or a co-signer, on a friend's, or even a close relative's, loan. Because under the law, if they default on that loan, the debt legally becomes yours to pay. And it can put your own flat, and your own hard-earned savings, directly at risk. Helping the people you love is a genuinely good thing. But tying your entire financial safety to somebody else's repayment is a completely different matter. Go in clear-eyed, or do not go in at all. Lesson 19 comes from 1 Timothy, chapter 5. Providing properly for your own household is treated there as a basic, fundamental duty. It is not framed as some kind of optional extra. The principle is that protecting the people who genuinely depend on you is foundational. It is the base of the whole pyramid, and not something you casually get around to later. The Singapore move is to get the cheap, boring protection firmly in place first. That means term life insurance, and a good integrated shield hospitalization plan, before anything fancy. Do all of that before you ever touch a high-fee investment-linked policy, the kind that awkwardly bundles pricey insurance together with rather mediocre investing. So cover the downside cheaply with plain insurance, and then go and invest the difference yourself. That way your family stays properly protected, and your money still grows the way it should. And buy that protection while you are still young and healthy. It is honestly at its very cheapest at exactly the moment in life when you feel like you do not really need it yet. Lesson 20 comes from Proverbs, chapter 23. Do not wear yourself out chasing after riches, it says. For money will sprout wings, and fly away like an eagle toward the sky. It is a real caution against burning yourself completely out, for the sake of wealth that can honestly just vanish on you anyway. The grind is not always worth the price. So weigh that punishing second job, or that exhausting side hustle, against its real and full cost. And that cost includes your health, your sleep, and your closest relationships. Because your own earning power is your single biggest financial asset, by a very long way. So protect that asset carefully, with proper rest, and with good hospitalization and term cover. Grind your health right into the ground, and the money you made will simply fly away again on hospital bills. So even here, in your own body, steady beats frantic. Sixth theme, and it is a short one, but it is genuinely vital. Deal honestly with people, and pay exactly what you owe. Lesson 21 comes from Proverbs, chapter 11. A false and weak balance is detestable, it says. But an honest, accurate weight quietly builds lasting trust. In a world that was, and still is, full of rigged measurements and clever cheating, being genuinely honest was a real competitive advantage. And that has not changed one bit today. So if you run any kind of business, or even a small side hustle, price and describe your things truthfully. That means the correct goods and services tax, and absolutely no fake strike-through discounts. Because a clean reputation quietly compounds over time, in exactly the same way that capital does. And a shady one gets brutally repriced the very moment your customers finally figure it out. Honesty is not just about ethics and doing the right thing. Over a full lifetime, simply being a person that others can trust is one of the most valuable financial assets you can ever own. And remember, trust is very slow to build up, but it is instant to lose. So guard your trust carefully, and treat it like the genuine, valuable asset that it truly is. Lesson 22 comes from Matthew, chapter 22. Render to Caesar the things that are Caesar's, it says. In plain, modern terms, that simply means pay whatever it is that you genuinely owe. The principle is really just about meeting your obligations honestly, and doing it on time, without any games, excuses, or clever delays. For the self-employed among you, this particular lesson is absolutely huge. Ring-fence the money that you will owe the tax office, and the goods and services tax that you have already collected from customers. Because that collected tax was honestly never really yours to spend in the first place. So set it firmly aside the very moment it comes in, so that the year-end is never, ever a sudden panic. Paying exactly what you owe, and paying it on time, is not just a lawful thing to do. It also keeps you completely free of penalties, free of stress, and free of nasty year-end surprises. Seventh theme, and it is the one that quietly stops money from ever owning you. Hold what you have loosely. Give some of it away, and make sure that you rest. Lesson 23 comes from Proverbs, chapter 11. One person gives freely, it observes, and yet grows richer. Another hoards tightly, and yet comes only to poverty. It is genuinely counterintuitive, but the idea is that open-handed people very often end up better off, and far freer in themselves, than the tight, clenched fist ones ever do. The practical move is to build a fixed giving line right into your monthly budget, rather than only ever donating whatever small amount happens to be left over at the very end. And where it genuinely fits, give through approved charities that hold institution of a public character status. That way, your donation also earns you a 250% tax deduction on top. So give on purpose, and not merely by accident. That simple habit quietly keeps money in its proper place, as your useful tool, and never, ever as your master. Lesson 24 comes from Leviticus, chapter 19. Do not harvest right up to the very edges of your field, it says. Instead, leave the gleanings behind for the poor and for those in need. It is an ancient and beautiful idea of built-in margin. It is about deliberately choosing not to squeeze out every single last drop of value, purely and only for yourself. The real application here is a mindset, more than a rule. Do not obsessively optimize every single dollar to your own personal benefit. Deliberately, on purpose, leave a little bit at the edges. So set aside a small, regular amount for supporting your extended family, or for charities that genuinely reach lower-income Singaporeans who are quietly struggling to get by. Leaving that margin at the edges of your field costs you a little something now, in the moment. But it is exactly what makes you the kind of person that wealth can never quietly spoil. Lesson 25 comes from Exodus, chapter 20, the old idea of a regular, protected day of rest. The deeper point is that you do not have to chase every last dollar in order to feel secure. Rest was actually built right into the design, on purpose, from the very beginning. Constant, restless, non-stop striving is not really a virtue at all. It is much closer to being a trap. And the money version of this idea is genuinely beautiful. You let your investments quietly do the hard work for you, while you actually rest. Passive index investing does exactly that. It quietly beats frantic day trading, which mostly just generates a whole lot of stress, high fees, and taxable churn, all for no reliable edge whatsoever over the simple, boring approach. So set it all up carefully, and then step back and actually go and live your life. Money is meant to serve your life, and not to consume every single waking hour that you have. And now the final theme, which might just be the most powerful one of them all. Enough is a genuine superpower and, in the end, it is also a legacy. Lesson 26 comes from Ecclesiastes, chapter 5. Whoever loves money, it says plainly, never has enough of it. The appetite for more always outruns the actual income. It names the treadmill exactly, and honestly. You earn a bit more, and then you simply want a bit more, and so somehow you never actually arrive anywhere at all. The antidote to all of that is capping your lifestyle inflation. So when a pay raise, or a bonus, finally lands, make it a firm rule to bank at least half of it before upgrading anything. Before you buy the newer car, or the bigger condo, or the very latest phone, quietly pay your own future self first, right out of that same raise. Future you will be deeply grateful. Rising pay should lift your savings rate, and not just your spending. That, right there, is precisely how a good income actually turns itself into real, lasting wealth over time. And look, there is absolutely nothing wrong with enjoying a good bonus. Just make very sure that your future self quietly gets its fair share first, before all the fun part begins. Lesson 27 comes from Proverbs, chapter 15. Better a little, it says, with peace and quiet, than great wealth that comes wrapped up in constant turmoil and stress. Contentment, it is quietly saying, can genuinely be worth far more than a bigger pile of money that happens to arrive attached to a whole lot of stress and worry. So right-size your housing and your car to your actual, real income. Do not let yourself become house poor, and stretch thin every month, purely in order to look successful to other people. A fully paid-off HDB flat, and no car at all, can genuinely leave you far wealthier, and far calmer, than a stretched condo and an expensive Continental car ever could. The stretched-out version always looks richer from the outside, to strangers. But the right-size version usually is the richer one, exactly where it actually counts, in the bank and in the mind. Lesson 28 comes from 1 Timothy, chapter 6. Contentment, it says, together with having your basic needs met, is itself described as very great gain. The real skill being described there is separating your true needs from your mere wants. And I promise you, that really is a learnable skill, and not just some fleeting feeling. Very practically, tag each of your expenses as either a genuine need or a mere want. And hold yourself firmly to a target savings rate. Aim for 25% or more of your take-home pay. Now notice very carefully what this quietly says. It is not really the size of the income that builds the wealth. It is the discipline of enough that does it, over the long run. High earners with no sense of enough often stay quietly broke for their entire lives. And modest earners who genuinely master it will slowly, patiently, and quietly become wealthy. And here is the deepest part of it. Enough is not really some magic number that you finally reach one day. It is a decision that you make, and then keep on making, on purpose. Lesson 29 comes from Ecclesiastes, chapter 7. Wisdom is a shelter, it says, just as money is a shelter. But knowledge has this one advantage: it preserves the very life of the one who has it. The insight is that knowledge protects you in ways that cash alone simply never can. A single wise decision will easily outlast, and out-earn, a lucky one-off windfall. So invest in yourself, deliberately. In your skills, and in real, practical financial literacy. Use your skills' future credits. And genuinely understand how CPF, tax, and insurance actually work. Because one single better-informed decision, the right home loan, the right insurance, or simply avoiding one nasty scam often out-earns, many times over, all the money and hours that it costs you. Money can be lost overnight, in a single bad moment. But wisdom, once you genuinely own it and internalize it, keeps quietly paying you back for the rest of your entire life. Lesson 30, the very last one, comes from Proverbs, chapter 13. A good person, it says, leaves an inheritance behind, all the way to their children's children. It gently stretches your whole time horizon out, past your own lifetime, and all the way to the generation that comes after the very next one. That is real, long-term thinking. The practical Singapore step that most people quietly skip is this. Write a CPF nomination, and make a proper will. And do both of those things right now, and not vaguely someday. Because without a CPF nomination in place, your money does not automatically go where you would actually want it to. But with one, your assets pass cleanly to the exact people you truly choose. And start your compounding early through CPF, and through the supplementary retirement scheme, so that there is genuinely something worthwhile there, at the end, to actually pass on. And that, right there, brings us full circle. Get free of debt, build it up steadily, hold it all loosely, and then, at the very end, leave something genuinely good behind you. So there they all are, 30 lessons, thousands of years old, each one pointing straight at your modern Singapore wallet. Now let us take a moment and tie the whole thing together. Notice the deliberate, sensible shape of the entire journey we just took. It moves in a very specific, and very logical, order from start to finish. First, you get yourself free, and you build a solid foundation. Then, you grow it, and you carefully protect it. And then, finally, you keep money firmly in its rightful place as a tool, and never as a master. And if you truly had to compress all 30 of them down into one single idea, then it might just be this. Be patient, be honest, and know exactly what enough looks like for you. And that particular order is not random at all. Skip the foundation, and all the fancy stuff on top of it eventually collapses. But skip the growth, and the foundation never quite becomes real freedom. And here is something I really want you to notice. None of it, not a single lesson, actually required you to believe anything religious at all. It is simply clear-eyed, practical money wisdom that just happens to be very, very old. So take it purely on its own merits. And one more honest reminder, before we finish. This has been education, and it has not been financial advice. Your numbers are yours alone, so please take all of this as ideas to weigh, and not as orders to obey. And please, whatever you do, Do not twist any of this into joyless, anxious penny pinching. The goal here was never to hoard. The real goal is to become free, and calm, and quietly generous. Now, if all of this suddenly feels like an awful lot to take on, then please do not try to do everything at once. Just pick 3 small, gentle moves for this coming week. Here is a simple little starter set for you. Kill 1 bad debt. Automate 1 savings transfer. And go and finally check that 1 statement you have quietly been avoiding for a while now. And please remember this. None of what we covered today shames anyone. You still need an income to save from, and starting late still beats never starting at all. So begin from wherever you honestly are right now. The genuinely remarkable thing, in the end, is just how little the real fundamentals have actually changed. The tools are all brand new: CPF, HDB, ETFs, Sora. But the underlying wisdom is truly ancient. Money, in the end, makes a wonderful servant, and a genuinely terrible master. And every single one of these 30 lessons is really, at its core, just about keeping money firmly in the servant's seat. So take these old, tested ideas, run every one of them through your own real life, and use whatever genuinely fits. This has been Lukebook. Take good care of your money and of the people that you love. Thanks for watching. If this made building wealth in Singapore a little clearer, give it a like and subscribe to Lukebook so you don't miss the next episode. See you in the next one.